Caloosahatchee River was more than water. It was a teacher, a keeper of stories, and a living presence that shaped how I saw the world. In the hush of early morning light, in the sacred stillness amidst rolling low across the water, I learned to listen, not just with ears, but with breath, skin, and bone. The river whispered ancient truths to the creak of shrimp boats, the cry of gulls, and the way sunlight glinted off its surface like a promise. It taught me patience, reverence, and the rhythm of a life measured by light and tide. My roots were tangled in its banks, where I first came to understand that silence holds more than emptiness. It holds meaning. That river didn't just reflect my memories. It held them, along with the spirit of my family. The scent of fish and grits from Great-Grandma Edna's tiny kitchen, and the porch where love was served quietly without fanfare, but with deep knowing. Even before I ever stepped onto the Eunice Sea, the river had already begun calling me. Its soft language, ripples against docks, birds overhead, wind in the mangroves, planted dreams of distant shores and stormy passages in my chest. As a child, I built imaginary boats from sticks and followed stormwater like it was an ocean. The birds became messengers, and the clouds carried whispers from the sea. I wasn't running from anything. I was reaching for something bigger, something wild and unnamed. By the time I laid hands on the Eunice Sea, it felt like finding an old friend I hadn't met yet. That river, with all its stillness and pull, had raised me to believe in the unseen journey, to feel wonder in the wind, and to trust that sometimes the current knows before you do. When people ask where I'm from, I don't just say a town, I say the river, because it made me, because it remembered me before I even knew who I was. Summer nights in Harlem Heights moved to a rhythm all their own. The soft creak of rocking chairs, the hush of hymns drifting into the dusk, and the laughter that rose from porches like fireflies from tall grass. Our porch wasn't just wood and nails. It was a sanctuary, a sacred space where stories breathed and memory sat down beside us, sometimes in silence, sometimes with a slow smile. That's where Great-Grandma Edna held court, her Bible open in her lap, her voice steady with the gravity of lived truth. Those evenings were lessons written not in chalk, but in blood. Deep history carried on melody, gesture, and glance. I was just a child then, sitting cross-legged near her feet, the smell of smudge fires in the air and something holy stirring in the shadows. It wasn't just storytelling, it was ceremony. It was inheritance. The hymns, the clapping hands, the screen door sighing open and shut like a breathing thing. In that soft orange glow, we weren't just a family. We were a chorus of memory, echoing back through generations. One night, beneath a blood-orange moon, she told the story of the Brunswick mermaid. I remember her voice as if it were woven into the very boards beneath me. It was 1916, she said, and a storm had rolled in from nowhere, sky boiling, earth trembling. A shrimp boat, battered and listing, dragged in a net heavy with more than catch. And there it was, a creature long-limbed and ancient, crying not with voice but with something deeper, sorrow too old to name. The town stood still, bound by awe and fear, and only when the mermaid was cut free did the storm break. Suddenly, cleanly, as if the very sky had exhaled. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't meant to be questioned. It was meant to be kept. Some stories live in the blood. Some storms carry memory. And sometimes what you catch in net isn't meant to be pulled into the light, but remembered in the dark, like a hymn, like a wound, like a promise. There was something sacred about the mornings when the dolphins came. They arrived without announcement, gray backs rising alongside the Eunice Sea as we crept down the Caloosahatchee. It felt less like chance, more like an old agreement, an unspoken rhythm between boat and sea. Fats believed they were messengers, scouts from someplace deep in the Gulf, and when they left in morning light or surfaced through thick fog, it felt like guidance, out near the dry Tortugas. I once saw a mother and calf circle our hull, and when the calf met my eyes, I felt something ancient settle in my chest. We didn't haul much shrimp that trip, but we had dolphins, sky, and stillness, a kind of wealth the market couldn't touch. Even now, when I return to the river, I watch the water. Not every voyage brings them, but when they do, it's like the sea remembers me. They always came when the net's emptied. Shrimp to one side, bycatch to the other, and just before first splash overboard, the dolphins would arrive. Not begging, not chaotic, just present, feeding with precision, teaching their calves, working the water like we worked the nets. Fats called the tide's reward. We never fed them directly. That would have broken the code. It was a ritual, mutual and old. The sea provided, and we all took what we needed. Watching them, I came to understand something deeper. This wasn't about charity or coincidence. It was about shared survival, respect, rhythm. On quiet days, when they surfaced beside us like silent priests of the current, I felt the line blur between man and wild thing. The ocean didn't speak, but it understood. And when the dolphins came, I knew I wasn't alone. I was part of something vast, generous, and alive. Storms in the Gulf don't ask permission. They come fast and hard, like judgment. That day, the sky blackened with fists of cloud. The wind shrieked through the rigging, and rain came sideways, lashing skin like knives. The waves reared, towering and alive, crashing over the bow as we scrambled to raise the nets. But the heavy metal doors still dragged the seafloor, threatening to flip the boat. When the outrigger pulley jammed, Captain Bennett gave me a look. Nothing said, but everything clear. I had to climb, out into the storm, onto the slick steel arms stretching over black water. Every step was a prayer, every gust a threat. Halfway out, the boat dipped and the outrigger nearly kissed the sea. I screamed without meaning to, terrified I'd never see my boys again. Shuby, Emmanuel, Damien, they anchored me even then. I reached the pulley, fought the rust and salt, tore my palm open to free it, and when it finally gave way, the boat exhaled beneath me, as if she'd been holding her breath too. Back on deck, soaked and shaking, I collapsed. Not brave, just alive. That night in my bunk, I thought of Shubby, not waiting for me, but being home. Storms strip you bare, but they also show you what you can't lose, what you won't. Below deck, another war played out. Once the nets were up, shrimp, squid, crab, and bycatch spilled across the deck in a writhing flood. Boots slipped, gloves tore, and the stench of diesel and sea guts hung thick. And then came the roaches. Not kitchen pests. These were tropical beasts, shiny-backed, antennae twitching, brazen as ghosts. They skittered over boots, bins, and even the backs of sleeping crew, bold and ancient, like they claimed the Unisea long before us. We cursed them, laughed about them, tried to scrub them out, but they always returned, drawn by the feast we left behind. In time, I stopped seeing them as intruders. They were survivors, same as us, clinging to steel and salt and motion, enduring the dark, thriving in rot. They reminded me that resilience isn't always clean or noble. Sometimes it's ugly, silent, and sharp-legged. And in their grotesque persistence, I saw a reflection of our own. Men feeding off the Gulf's chaos, trying to make a life in the wreckage. In that stinking, swaying world, you learn what survival really looked like. Not glory, not comfort, just grit, and something primal that refused to quit. Shrimping near Fort Jefferson at night felt mythic. The fort loomed silent and red under the moon, an old Civil War relic that never saw a battle but still seemed soaked in sorrow. It stood on Garden Key like a ghost anchored in brick, watching us work the Black Gulf waters. We dropped nets in silence, trawling for sweet pink shrimp while the lighthouse blinked in the distance. The fort became companion. Its presence felt not heard, like it remembered storms, soldiers, and prisoners, and now watched over us. Fats used to say it was like a judge, silent, patient, fair, in that hush between halls. The sea stretched out forever, and under floodlights, the boat turned into a floating world of shadows, white shrimp and whispered stories. Tales would surface slowly, storm yarns, heartbreaks, near-deaths, and we clung to them like lifelines. Shrimping wasn't just about the catch. It was about surviving the dark, together. When the nets came up heavy, we'd cheer like gamblers who'd hit the jackpot. When they came up light, we worked harder and hoped more quietly. That rhythm, pull, wait, listen, taught us how to endure. But some nights, the silence cut deeper. Not peace, but a pressing weight. Voices faded. Laughter thinned. You started thinking too much about home, about whether it was all worth it. You missed things. The scrape of your son's shoes, your wife humming in another room, the smell of real coffee. When halls came up empty again and again, the ache of futility set in. The sea grew quiet in a cruel way, like it had forgotten us. Some nights, I'd stand at the rail whispering to the water. Just one more good haul. No answer, just stars blinking too far away. That kind of silence teaches you. It humbles you. And when nets finally rose full again, maybe not a fortune, but enough, we felt it like grace. The crew's voices lightened, the boat pointed home, and the fort faded behind us like a blessing. I imagined Shuby's smile, the boys rushing to the door, dinner in the air. That's what we hauled in too. Not just shrimp, but the belief that all this labor meant something. The sea doesn't promise mercy, but if you endure, it sometimes gives you your way back. Every trip began with a silent clock ticking, counting not minutes but margin. From the second we left the dock, we owed more than we had. Fuel, groceries, ice, all fronted on credit with the unspoken rule: to pay it back or don't come back. Every net drop was a wager, and when the hauls came up light, the tension thickened. I remember one trip, 5 days in, shrimp thin, ice melting, and that faint sour smell creeping into bins like a warning. We sniffed around the hatch, praying it was nerves. Sometimes it was. Sometimes it wasn't. Captain Bennett never said much in those stretches, but you could read the pressure in the set of his jaw, the way he rubbed his neck when no one looked. The fear wasn't just losing the catch. It was showing up back home empty, dignity stripped by the numbers on a dockside clipboard. Every haul came with whispers. Do we cut our losses or keep chasing ghosts? Out there, time is currency, and the longer you chase, the more you owe. And threaded through it all, above the fear and fatigue, was home. Shuby, steady and silent in her strength. The boys, changing while I missed it. Their faces were the reason I kept going when everything else screamed quit. One night, I checked the bins myself, shrimp still firm, but barely. I looked at the sky and whispered, just one more big haul. And somehow, the Gulf answered. We pulled in shrimp like pink gold, packed them tight into the last of the ice. No cheers, just a long, quiet exhale of survival. Just enough. And sometimes, enough is everything. But shrimping doesn't reward luck. It rewards learning. Every drag was a question, every net an answer. Even failure taught us something if we paid attention. The sea didn't shout lessons. It whispered through weight, texture, bycatch. We adjusted constantly, spread wider, dragged shallower, shifted spots like chess players chasing patterns. Captain Bennett said, drag with intention, and we tried. We changed strategies mid-haul, moved 6 times in 2 days once, just stay close to that sweet spot. When the net came up heavy after dry spells, it wasn't just shrimp. It was proof we'd listened, adapted, endured. But no matter how well we did, coming home always landed heavy. The mouth of the Caloosahatchee felt warm, familiar, but joy faded fast. Dockside wasn't celebration. It was calculation. Shrimp offloaded, debt subtracted, paychecks whittled down to near nothing. Then the clock reset. You'd see it in the men's eyes, especially Captain Bennett's. Ashore, he looked out of place, like his boots didn't fit right on land. The sea had claimed the best of us. What we brought home was a tired version, the ghost. I thought I could be both. Man at sea, man at home. But the truth was, the Gulf got my focus, my energy, my presence. What was left, rocking from the last haul, already drifting toward the next, was all I could give my family. And that's the hardest part. Not the storms, not the work. It's knowing the sea gets your best, and home gets what's left. The first light spilled over the Gulf as I shuffled into the galley of the Eunice. My shoulders aching and my mind fogged by half-slept hours. The ritual of breakfast offered brief solace. A skillet seasoned by years of salt and struggle, eggs sizzling like an old song, grits thick and slow on the back burner. Outside, Fats was already working the hold, ice ringing against steel as the morning took shape. Captain Bennett mended torn nets with silent precision, his hand steadying the way of men who respect the sea's toll. We didn't talk much. We didn't have to. The food warmed more than our bellies. It stoked the stubborn pride that comes from honest work. When Fats asked if I was learning to be a shrimper, I nodded, mouth full, heart fuller. In that moment, I wasn't a guest anymore. I was part of something larger, part of the rhythm, part of the Gulf's slow, grinding dance. In quieter hours, when the sea calmed and the stars blinked down like old friends, my thoughts drifted home to Harlem Heights and Great-Grandma Edna's kitchen. The scent of fried mullet and yellow grits lived in my bones. Each meal a kind of prayer she stirred with care and song. Her food wasn't just sustenance. It was soul work, memory on a plate. I tried to recreate it years later, chasing her touch with cornmeal-dusted fingers and humming her hymns to get the rhythm right. Mistakes didn't matter. What mattered was a love that rose with each try, the same love that filled our porch, that anchored me when the nets tore, when the sea turned cruel. Cooking her meals brought her back to me, not in body but in spirit, steady as a cast-iron skillet. And I learned what she always knew. Some things, like love, like memory, like good grits, take time. Sleeping in daylight is an indulgence. It's survival. After long, brutal nights on the Gulf hauling shrimp through storm and steel, you learn to rest when the sun rises and the world wakes. At first, your body resists. Light floods a cabin. Your nerves buzz, and every sound above deck jars you awake. But with time, you surrender. You teach your mind to rest in noise, your body to find sleep in heat and hum. That rest is fragile, easily shattered, and never deep enough. But becomes sacred, a ritual of the night shift life. You wake not refreshed, but functional, half dreaming in sunlight, blinking into the new shift like a ghost. There's intimacy in that rhythm. Boots slipping on like instinct, coffee burned black with meaning, the sea always waiting. You eat when others sleep. You work when others dream. And you rest only when the sun stands high, rocked by the boat like a child. It's a rhythm few understand, but once you do, it shapes you. There's peace in that inverted world. In the exhaustion, in the cycle, it becomes not just how you sleep, but how you survive. The engine never quiets, and neither does the pressure. Its thrum becomes your heartbeat, your clock, your constant reminder that the work is never done. Even at anchor, it purrs and clicks like a whisper of responsibility. Over time, you tune yourself to it, measure your worth by its demands. It echoes in your bones, in your dreams, in the worries you carry home. Bills, children, expectations. That hum becomes a soundtrack of your life, fueling you through second jobs, forced smiles, restless sleep. And yet, the sea teaches another rhythm, a harder one. Surrender. You learn that storms come no matter how strong you are. That effort doesn't always equal outcome. that some things must be let go. Plans, pride, control. The old-timers understood it. So did great-grandma Edna. Stirring grits with quiet wisdom. Surrender isn't weakness, it's grace. The sea reminds you daily, you're not in charge. And in that realization, when you stop gripping so tight, you find a quiet kind of strength. You listen, you breathe, you carry the hum, but you don't let it drown you. That's the real art, not just surviving the noise, but learning when to be still within it. Shrimping taught me life lessons no classroom or sermon ever could. It was a harsh teacher, through repetition, loss, and raw beauty, that showed me the value of showing up, enduring even when the nets came up empty. I learned humility, grit, and patience. The sea doesn't care who you are or what you deserve. It taught me trust, rhythm, and how to fail and try again, showing me that success isn't always in the haul but in the persistence. Shrimping revealed the sacredness of struggle, the importance of gratitude, and the strength in surrendering control. It grounded me in love, legacy, and identity, giving me perspective and wisdom only earned through callous hands and an open heart. Passing the torch is not a single moment, but a series of quiet acts. Teaching knots, sharing rhythms, and trusting others to learn and grow in their own way. It's about letting go, becoming a lighthouse rather than the ship, and embracing a new kind of strength in guiding rather than leading. Home and heritage are carried within us, stitched into habits, stories, and memories, shaping resilience and healing through time. The sea taught me when to hold on and when to let go, reminding me that healing means remembering without breaking. Now, I pass these lessons and love on to my sons, knowing legacy lives not in holding tight, but in giving away the flame to light the way forward.